Eli5, do you really waste water? Eli5 here. Yes, it's a waste. Thing is, it affects more than just water bill or water supply. That's like asking, does eating lots of candy just affect my candy bill or the candy supply? We all know you shouldn't eat lots of candy for other reasons. Same here, you shouldn't waste water for many other reasons. The reasons are complicated, and since you're 5 I'll say that drinking water is limited and often hard to make and move around, plus sewerage is always gross and hard to deal with, so using water wastefully can cause damage to nature that is often hard to get better. All the water you've ever drank was basically dinosaur pee at some point. Most of the molecules of water have remained unchanged for millions of years. Some of them have been split with electrolysis and may have bonded with separate hydrogen or oxygen elements, or be new water molecules from oxygen and hydrogen explosions from those elements. But mostly, you're drinking old dinosaur pee. It will take chemicals and energy to treat and clean it, but the water can't really be wasted. At the end of the day, everything is just atomic Legos snapped together, can't really be destroyed. Household water usage ultimately ends up back in the watershed. It is not entirely wasted, but does take energy to treat and send to your house. Agricultural water and water for lawns and other outdoor applications do in fact waste water. California's entire agricultural system is based on enormous well water usage to grow water-intensive crops in a desert. Perhaps desalination efforts could help reduce strain on watersheds, but it would cost quite a lot. I'd be willing it would cost less than losing all of California's farmland when the aquifer dries up, though. I would add that in some areas, there is also the concern of the amount of water taken from the lake river, that if it's a too big portion of its flow, it's gonna have a significant impact downstream. This is mostly for water usage that won't come back directly to source. For example, watering a driveway instead of using a broom will have a good portion of the water evaporate instead of going back to the river through the sewers. While the water is still in the water cycle, the river the water was taken from is affected and all that is downstream. The amount of fresh water is limited by the replacement capability of rain and snowfall. Wasting water puts it in what's available overall. While individuals using lots of water to keep monoculture lawns hydrated has an appreciable impact, the big users are industry and agriculture. Being told to take short showers or not play in the water is a strategy by big business to make us think we are the problem. Same goes for fossil fuels. We could electrify all we want, but the problem doesn't go away unless industries change how they get power. Absolutely, the amount of fresh clean water that is used in manufacturing is astounding. As a single user it may not seem like much, but on an industrial scale it is absurd. There is a limited finite amount of fresh drinkable water, and in many places none at all. Reducing consumption is just a small part of it all. Reusing water and finding ways of using ocean or otherwise undrinkable water are some ideas. Some cities experience limited water pressure or use during high demand periods. Not so much of a your use issue, but a collective impact in the sense that you use more than needed to achieve the task, yes. In the sense that the water disappears forever, no. Really not wasting water so much as wasting all the effort and costs associated with getting drinkable water to wherever you are. The water still exists, but all that effort was done to no purpose, so wasted. That is, usable water is not generally easy to get. It isn't water that gets wasted, it is usable water that is wasted. Once used, the water still exists, but it is normally no longer usable without new effort. Kind of depends on where you live. As others have said, there's the energy and other costs associated with water treatment. If you live in an area with abundant renewable energy and no shortage of fresh water, then the circumstances are a lot different if you live in an area that draws water from already depleted aquifers and uses coal-burning power plants for power generation. In the latter case, wasting water is much more relevant and meaningful because you are depleting essentially non-renewable resources for the area. It's a waste of energy really. There's a very small amount of fresh water on Earth. And of that it still takes lots of energy to make it drinkable. Most houses in developed countries use drinking water for all things, so when you waste that water you're wasting the energy that was used to purify it. Since we're in a climate crisis with too much carbon emitted into the atmosphere, and renewables not quite there yet, it's definitely a bad thing to waste that energy by adding unnecessary carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. In most municipalities, water is pulled from a reservoir such as a lake. It has very basic treatment done to it and then is delivered to your home. When you use that water for showering, laundry, brushing your teeth, toilet, etc., that water goes to a treatment facility. It takes a lot of power and money to treat water before it can be released back into the wild, often through city waterways. Some is lost through evaporation. Some is lost along with the sludge that has to be discarded. You don't really waste water as it all ends up back in the cycle eventually. What you are really wasting is clean and safe water. There are costs and capacity issues with obtaining water, as you don't want to be drinking water that's been flushed through someone's toilet. Some water sources are also being drained faster than they are refilling, such as underground aquifers, which take thousands of years to refill, or the Colorado River, which is having more water taken out than flow into it. Water used in showers, dishwashing, etc. gets discharged into sewers and ultimately makes its way to larger bodies of water, rivers, oceans, where it rejoins the water cycle, so the water itself is recycled. Water, therefore, as a substance, isn't being wasted but treated. Potable water is as this water, if it reaches the ocean, is no longer fresh water, and even if it reached a river or a lake instead, it would still need to be treated again before coming back to your home. It depends on where you live. I live in Ohio. Average rainfall where I live 45 inches per year. We have Lake Erie to the north and the Ohio River to the south. The water I drink comes from wells in the Miami Valley Aquifer. It is high quality and requires almost no treatment. The biggest cost is pumping it. Taking a long shower does not really waste any resources where I live. Also, my wastewater goes into a septic system, so there is no usage of resources there. In my town, yes, drinking water is pulled from the groundwater, but wastewater goes into the river and then the ocean. Normally water evaporates from the ocean, wind takes it to mountains where it turns to snow. In spring the snow slowly melts and refills the groundwater. Climate change has made the springtime hot, so the snow melts faster than the ground can absorb, and the water all floods the river and goes immediately out to sea. Absolutely. While water recirculates, fresh water, and specifically your local water source, is not infinite. The water you pull from a river, lake, or aquifer drains into a river that feeds into the ocean, where it becomes salty and undrinkable. It will go through the water cycle and come back down as rain. But if you're consuming more from your local water source than is fed into via natural processes, it's going to run dry. Sadly, yes. Won't bother repeating the others regarding energy use. What I will add is we need to utilize gray and black water you use to wash dishes, flush the toilet, etc. It's absolutely nuts we use treated water to water plants or flush the loo. The amount of water and energy we'd save would be astronomical. Hopefully one day I can design my own off-grid house rather than retrofitting a property 4x older than me. In general, you're wasting the energy to treat it, heat it, pump it around, etc. Also, a lot of fresh water comes from wells, groundwater. While the underground well will eventually fill back up, we humans are particularly good at draining them faster than they can refill. So, yes. Eventually many wells will run dry too, or at least find a new equilibrium that won't supply what's required of it. I just read a First Contact novel about an English dude who left with alien observers in the 1550s, and after a decade at light speeds, he returned in the 21st century. Despite the fact that our amazing technological progress did nothing to make up for our pathetic lack of advancement in social relations, he was most enthused by the concept of clear tap water in a toilet for even the most challenged. Yes, it is wasted in a sense. Although there is always more water out there, most of our fresh water comes from underground aquifers and surface sources like rivers and lakes. Many of these sources are drying up due to overuse and climate change, and face a very real threat of going away entirely. The cost to desalinate ocean water is way higher than collecting it from natural fresh sources like these. Any use of water is wasting water. It's impossible to define exactly what would be proper use versus wasting in an objective way, so all the water would need to be reused, not to be wasted, which is not. It goes back to the ecosystem and then it's taken again from there. Humans use a huge amount of water compared to wild animals, so yes, in that sense it's wasting. Water can't really be wasted unless you eject it into space, I guess. What you can waste is energy used in the treatment, heating, cooling, transportation, etc. of water. What you could also do is move the water from a drought-stricken community to somewhere else. For example, water bottling plants in the southwestern US shipping their water to other places. Craziness! It depends where you live. In places like cities by the Great Lakes, water is removed, treated and then put back into the lakes. If you live somewhere that uses well water, then the water you take out is not put back. Technically that water is still on planet Earth and part of the whole system, but it will not be easily available again for use by humans. Well, from a physics standpoint, matter is cyclical. While energy uses one way, you can't get it back. You could say water isn't wasted. But in more practical terms, really it's about the energy that goes into treating it. You letting the faucet run is wasteful because it isn't useful and it puts a strain on resources it wouldn't otherwise need to be. Depends where you live. If the place you live in has lots of rain and lots of too much water, using a lot of water only means you have less money for toys. If the place you live in does not have much water and the water you waste comes from deep under the ground and it gets less and less, your wasting water makes the animals and plants very sad. You can waste treated water, which is basically just wasting the chemicals and energy used to treat the water. My untreated well water that goes directly back into the ground where it came from isn't wasted, but it is held up for years until it gets back to the very deep aquifers it came from, freshly filtered by nature and ready to go again. Two things at play. Immediate treated supply. If the water plan is not sufficient for the population and people consume too much, you can have a spot shortage. Longer-term reservoirs. If the water source isn't adequate, short rainfall, etc., then the plants don't have enough water to treat. This tends to require longer-term conservation. You waste water in terms of the water as a product produced from raw water and labor of people. You don't waste the water in terms of there's not enough to go around unless you live in an area where replenishment isn't outpacing use. If you're on a well, also the water isn't really being treated, so not sure about you wasting it.